Hey everyone, it's me, Rai Rai, and today I'm going to be painting Clay Oven. It's a little Indian food restaurant in San Francisco that I pass by very often. The drawing and inking and painting part took about 2 hours, but I sped it up into a time lapse. In this composition, I really liked the way the tree was pretty much overpowering the branding of the restaurant, and it just reminds me a lot about how sometimes we'll set out to do something, but nature has a way of changing plans, whether it's through the rain or a windstorm. And in this case, I plan to kind of draw this Indian food restaurant because I really love it. And I totally forgot that there's a tree like dead center right in front of it. And I was like, you know what? It's going to go in. The whole composition is basically going to be a tree with a little bit of backdrop, which happens to be this restaurant I really like. Clay Oven is really special to me because when I was going through a transition period in my life, when I was getting more into arts education and things like that, I teach a lot of art classes and on retail stores too, and also online and in person for Winsor Newton. So I was transitioning from being a full-time artist to educator, and when I started educating, I found myself taking a lot of lunch breaks here and kind of sitting alone in the restaurant and having this beautiful kind of buffet Indian experience once a week. I just treated myself out because Indian food is one of my favorite types of food. But also, I just had to come to terms that I'm probably not going to be an artist that can sustain themselves in the Bay Area in San Francisco with just selling artwork. I did it for a little while, but it just wasn't sustainable for me. This place really became kind of a comfort food place for me. And I would sit there for I don't know, maybe like 30 to 40 minutes over my lunch break and just kind of slowly pick away at my naan and all the different food that they had. They have a big spread. They have this lamb that just kind of melts in your mouth. So yeah, I really love this restaurant, and I knew right away that I was going to need to include it in my urban sketching kind of series. If you see my videos before, I ink everything with a waterproof ink in a fountain pen, and it's Winsor Newton Indian ink, and it is water resistant, so I could, once it dries, I can paint over it with washes of watercolor. The sky, I do my typical kind of wet into wet. I put a wash of water and then drop in some of the blue. For this front facade of the Indian restaurant, I'm adding, I believe it's yellow ochre with a little bit of burnt sienna to kind of warm it up a little more, make it a little bit more of an orangey yellow. A challenge in this painting was painting around the branches with my large brush. I'm using a Series 7 sable brush, which is nice because it has a really sharp point, but you can't get the sharpest point if your brush is really full with the watercolor. And so it made it more time consuming because I had to only load my brush halfway. I could just jump to a smaller brush, which I think I do a little later. This is a number 6. I think I jumped to a number 4 a little later, and it kind of speeds things up, but then you have to load your brush more, even more so with the kind of the smaller brush sometimes. I don't know. But it was causing a little bit of issues for me. The painting was taking much more long than I thought, and the painting didn't seem tedious at all. The urban sketching I'm doing, I'm making sure that I'm not taking on anything that's going to feel tedious, but it was more time consuming than I had expected. If you've seen my other urban sketching videos, you've probably seen me not inking the surrounding buildings and leaving them kind of more loose watercolor. That's by design so that the focus is more of the subject I'm choosing, but also because I love painting abstractly too, so it's a way for me to be able to paint what I like in 2 different styles or 3 different styles in one painting, so it just keeps it exciting for me and more fun. The color I'm using for this side building, that side building actually is Little Original Joe's, so the one I'm painting. And I actually did a painting of it. I'll see if I can make a YouTube video of it. If not, there is an Instagram video of it. This is Payne's Gray that I used in that building. It is beautiful because if you add water, it's kind of a very cold bluish gray. But then if you use it more concentrated, it's pretty much almost a black, very transparent, cool black. This, I believe, is the number 4 brush that I'm using now for Series 7 Winsor & Newton watercolor brush. Like I said, just to be very transparent, I work with Cool Art, which includes Winsor & Newton and Liquitex, but I am a Winsor & Newton artist, so you'll see me using a lot of Winsor & Newton watercolor paints and sometimes paper and brushes. I just want to put that disclaimer out there. They're not sponsoring this video at all, though. I get paid to kind of go into colleges and retail stores and give demos there. These demo urban sketches I'm doing because family and my cousins and stuff are interested in doing urban sketching, and I wanted to practice, and I figured, well, might as well film them, and then I have content to kind of share with everyone. I also got really into urban sketching many years ago. I didn't start till recently, but I got into it many years ago because I was watching a lot of YouTube videos. So I was hoping that I could just add to that content that people like to watch, and watching other artists work. If you're seeing this now, this is actually barely sped up, but I do want to be transparent and tell you this is still sped up. So I think it's maybe like twice the speed. So you see, I kind of take my time mixing my colors. I don't mix it spot on, but a lot of times I'm like typing. You can see right now I'm typing to my family or friends or coworkers and texting them and messaging them. And I do a lot when I'm in my studio. I have ADHD, so I get distracted very easily. I decided to put this in the video, so if anyone wants to see what it's like in my studio, or if they have ADHD too, they could see, yeah, I get distracted all the time when I'm working. Sometimes there'll be a car playing music outside and I get so distracted by it. I'm like, I gotta hear that song. What song is that? So I'm gonna like go outside and try to hear it. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be painting right now. But yeah, I get easily distracted. Part of the reason why I do urban sketching indoors is because a lot of the time, only time I have to kind of free paint is from midnight till 3 a.m. each day. So here I am. Well, this is in the afternoon on a day I'm off, but otherwise I'm usually, because I think it was like 4 o'clock-ish or something my watch said, but otherwise I'm usually, the other days during the week, I'm only available at night. I'm curious when a lot of people who work during the day, when they like to paint, is it only on the weekends, or is it during the weekdays like me? Is it before they go to work really bright and early, or is it late at night when there's less distractions? That's part of the reason why I also like painting at night, is I have less distractions going on. I'm learning a lot about watercolor as I'm doing this project. And one of the things I ran into is the color always dries so much lighter than I think. I know it's going to dry lighter, but I'm still always scared to go in too dark. And you can see here, I am like, oh my gosh, it's too dark. But it really will lighten up a lot more. One thing I'm getting used to with urban sketching is choosing my colors. So right now I'm not really focused on realism, but I feel like if I could critique this, I'm not being as brave as I am with maybe oil painting. A lot of times I'll photograph a model and I'll paint them. If they have black hair, I'll give them like purple hair instead. If they have, I don't know, brown eyes, I'll give them hazel eyes. If they have blue eyes, I'll give them deep purple eyes instead. And I don't know, I just like playing with color more. I like having creative freedoms. And I don't know, it's because the drawing part, I kind of, like the tree, I didn't represent exactly how I saw it. I kind of just went with kind of how I felt in that moment. But yeah, maybe it's the watercolor, the uncontrollable aspect of it when you're kind of doing more wet into wet washes, or also the lack of accuracy I have with it. Like you'll see when I get a lot more paint in that I actually have a lot of white spots that show through, which I feel like is a nice aesthetic that urban sketching has. That gives it a lot of charm and kind of sketchiness and rawness to it. But that little bit of less control that I have with watercolor that I do have with oil painting, or that I could rectify easier with oil painting. I think that's what I like, and maybe why I'm not, being so fantastical or surreal in these paintings. They're a little bit more observational than I feel like I usually do. To plug myself, you could see my work at ryanmartinart.com. My current homepage is kind of a reflection of my ADHD right now. I, for years, categorized my art in different kind of genres, or it was like portraits, or then I had it by medium, and then at one point I had it by I guess, yeah, projects, and then sometimes it was by year, and I just always failed in ways to kind of categorize and organize my art, because I do oil painting, I do color pencil work, I do acrylic work, I do watercolor work, I do collage and mixed media, I sometimes do sculpture, installation work, I do photography, I do video work as well sometimes. So I'm just kind of really at a loss of where I am in my art. I feel like in my earlier career with art, I knew exactly what I wanted to be, like this oil painter. But then the more I began to go to art shows, and the more I kind of scrolled TikTok or Instagram or even YouTube shorts, I started feeling this kind of box closing in, that like every artist is kind of pushed into this curated mode that you have to be. Like you have to have this style, this niche, and you have to stick with it to be successful. There'll be a lot of art talks about that I go to. There'll be art dealers that I overhear and that I listen to and talk about that. There'll be art consultants and artist consultants that talk of this as well. And then all your schooling is kind of like that too, even though they're telling you not to be like that and to be free. A lot of it has to do with finding your voice and your niche. But what if your voice is kind of scattered as fuck? Like, what if you're like ADHD and you can't finish a series if your life depended on it almost? And sometimes that's where I feel I'm at. And I have peers and coworkers that I identify with a lot that start projects and never finish them. And this is a little series I'm working on right now, and I might not get through it. I painted like, I don't know, it was like 100 acrylic paintings of different film stills cropped in, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll go back to that one day, but will I? There's a lot of things I want to make, and I'm like, maybe I'm not really an artist. Maybe I'm a maker. I just like making things, and I like creating things, and I don't have the patience, the skill, the talent. I maybe to have it to paint or draw, but not to be organized and be able to pull together a cohesive concept and be loyal to it. But I am inspired by a lot of artists that do delve into two different kind of realms or a couple different mediums. I feel like a lot of artists are kind of more accepted more widely after, or that kind of switching up mediums after kind of they maybe had their fame or their success or their following. But what if you're still kind of building your following? Like, are we not allowed to do that? But yeah, it's a lot of things to think about. I'm being much more dramatic than I actually am about this, I think, because I'm like, what do I say while you're watching me paint? But this is kind of my little one-man podcast, I guess, and I'm just ranting about things that go on in an artist's mind. This might not necessarily happen when I'm painting. When I'm painting, it's much more inner dialogue of joy and kind of the experiences I had at this place. Or I remember I was thinking about trees and climbing trees when I was younger, and I'm like, when did I stop climbing trees? And you might call me crazy, but that's kind of the things that come to mind. I'm always referring back to memories, usually when I'm painting, remembering what the branches look like when you're climbing up a tree, and then how much more distance you feel from the ground when you're starting to climb down versus up. But yeah, this tree, I mixed together some purple, some Payne's gray. It's a lot of dirty stuff that was on my palette, like oranges mixed with blues, so it's kind of more neutralized. And I just went in and started going in, layering the tree. I kind of wet the branch, and then I drop in more on top. When I blow dry it later, it's going to kind of, all that beautiful contrast that you're seeing now is going to just kind of fade away. So I do have to go back into it later. But I'm interested in doing a lot more videos. If ranting is fine with you, you should give me some feedback. If it's not, if you want me to talk more about the process, I can do that too. I love talking about the process. If you want me to do both, let me know. Try to make videos to kind of satisfy this need to kind of make and share and teach. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm touching on things that you want to hear about. All right, these are my favorite parts, is doing reflections. A lot of people like test colors on a little swatch of scrap paper. I tend to just do it on the painting. I'm like, whatever, it's gonna get covered up, I guess. If it shows through, who cares? Cerulean blue is just like one of my favorite blues with all the series. One day I'll switch it up and start using another blue. I kind of have a hard time committing to my blues. Pretty unfaithful with them. There's Payne's Gray, one of my favorites. I feel like sometimes I should be mixing my darks, but instead I just go for Payne's Gray. It's so convenient to just have such a neutral color that's not dull or dead. It has a really beautiful depth to it. I bet this whole series I'm going to just be like, oh my god, Payne's Gray, Payne's Gray. It's just so great. I love it. There's some ultramarine blue that got in there. I was like, I need some blue. Kind of felt like a primary triad going on. If you're interested in what a primary triad is, that's the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. The building had a lot of red, obviously you could see that, and had this mustardy yellow. So the composition naturally will crave the other part of the color wheel, which is blue. This is a 0 size Winsor Newton professional synthetic sable brush. The synthetic sables are nice because I like them a lot because they're a lot stiffer. So I'm able to get details in a little bit more accurately with the way I work. So I love switching to this to get in all the details. And this part just feels so fun because it's like drawing. I like drawing because it's just kind of that your first love as a painter or an artist. Usually, like my first experience was holding a crayon, probably before a paintbrush. And it just always feels good to be able to draw. I I never thought I was going to go that dark in that building on the right because I wanted it to kind of fall away. But then I was like, oh yeah, let's bring it out. It needed some more contrast on the right. It was just so flat, a little boring to me. There's little shadows. This is the best part about urban sketching, I feel like, is you get all these colors filled in like almost like a coloring book. You're like, hey, let's put the red in the red part. Let's put the yellow in the yellow part. And then when it comes to putting in the shadows, then everything just starts to sing and you're like, oh my God, it's coming together. This is why I do this, because it's just, everything just starts getting ignited and you're just like, I don't know. I feel like you kind of like fly, or I don't know. I never really surfed much or anything, even though I grew up in Southern California, but it feels like body surfing is something I did. Like you kind of just catch a wave and you just go, and it's just this thrilling feeling. More little shadows. When I finish a painting, I tend to go in with some white ink. I just love the third little layer of detail. There's like the original inking, then there's the watercolor, and then there's like this top layer of white ink. And it is always fun to kind of scratch in reflections and little nicks and details. And it just, I don't know, it's this feeling you have to try. You have to try it. White ink. I have these little jelly pens that you could use. They're really cheap. You could just kind of go in with a white jelly pen. But this is kind of my more fancier method. I filled up a fountain pen with the white ink, and it's fun. You could kind of draw on top of it. You can notice I added more contrast on the left building. I just wanted the middle building to be a little bit more grounded than I do in some of my other urban sketching. But yeah, this is the little painting of clay oven. Ooh, there goes some branch shadows. I forgot I added those. If you want to see more urban sketching, please just make sure you, you can subscribe or comment, like, share, and I will be back with another painting soon.